the sea is an open system. Understanding that we're just one part of this system, we contribute and are also recipients of something greater. I think that realization would make us more aware and astute of our place, as a global citizen.
I'm Farzad Nashir, and welcome to another episode of Ocean Purpose Project's Opportunity Webinar Series. So joining me today is Dr. Zeehan Jaafar. She's a lecturer at the Biological Sciences Department at the National University of Singapore. We've invited Dr. Zeehan here for this webinar because of her amazing work surrounding ecology and evolution of marine fishes that has really helped us understand how to better protect and conserve our marine and coastal ecosystems. Thank you so much for joining us today, Dr. Zeehan. To start us off, maybe you can tell us more about yourself. You have an origin story that got you into marine science.
Hi, Parizat. Hi, everyone. Thank you very much to Ocean's Purpose Project and to Parizat for inviting me and giving me this opportunity to share, my thoughts and a bit of my story with all of you. So thank you again. When I was an undergraduate, I knew I really loved nature and I wanted to work with plants and animals, more animals than plants. Started joining societies and trying to look at laboratories where, people needed help. I volunteered a lot. And there was an opening for a research project, an undergraduate research project on fishes. I took it up. It was very challenging because that was to look at differences between day and night in the fish community in the mangroves. And I had never been in a mangrove before that. And every time I walked into the mangrove, the mud was so soft. This was at Pasir Ris, and I sunk. And it was horrible, but I was hooked. I really enjoyed being outdoors and working with organisms, trying to explain some of the observations that we see. I was away for a while, carrying out a postdoc on the evolution of mud skippers. And then since I got back, I've been teaching at the National University of Singapore.
Funnily enough, Ocean Purpose Project is actually based in Pasir Ris. So we would know exactly what you're talking about, with the mangroves and all that. So currently, you and your team, you're working on a really huge project, which involves building the first ever fish DNA library for Singapore. So can you tell us more about this project and what exactly does it entail and why is it important?
Sure. So this is one of the projects that we're working on. This is in collaboration with many different parties. Dr. Henning Seedorf from Temasek Life Science Laboratories, Lee Kong Chian Natural History Museum, as well as the National Parks Board. In our case, what we're doing is that we're taking the DNA of fishes, we're sequencing this DNA, and the sequence that we get, we place them in a digital library. Over time, we will have close to a complete set of DNA. It's a bit like a reference library. So for example, if I were to find a fillet of fish, so let's say, our friends at the customs department found this bunch of fillets and they wanted to figure out what species it is, whether it is a species that, the sellers say it is. So we can take a bit of that DNA and we can match it to our database. With fishes, often the juveniles, the larvae, the young of the fishes, they don't really look like the adults. So this will also help in identifying some of the younger fishes. Another important aspect of this library would be for environmental DNA. So, you can actually just go out to the sea, take some water, maybe 3 to 5 liters of water, filter that water, and whatever DNA material that is in the water, you can sequence whatever that is, that DNA material in the water, and then you can match without actually catching the organism, just by looking at the DNA that's in the water, right? Because fishes are like us, so they can shed skin, they can shed mucus, and this is a very powerful tool because it can tag things like what is there, alien species. We're not so advanced as to know the quantity of the abundance of the organisms that are there, but we can say whether they're present or absent, and that library would help us with that.
Wow, I didn't know the extent and the power of that project and how amazing it is. Like if I collected, a sample of water from Pasir Ris, I could just tell, what's the diversity of fish or, marine life. You were also the lead editor for the Singapore Blue Plan in 2018. So for those of you who are not familiar with the Singapore Blue Plan, it is essentially a document that represents the visions of the marine community in Singapore. And it is presented to the government every decade. So in the most recent Blue Plan, Dr. Zeehan and her team showcase the amazing biodiversity in our coastal and marine ecosystems. Some of our viewers here may be thinking, Singapore got marine life? So maybe you can give us an idea about the biodiversity of our blue spaces.
First, have to clarify that it's not my team. It's really the entire community. The Blue Plan is actually very inclusive. Anyone who wanted to be included, could. And that's the beauty of such a plan, right? Because it's a ground-up initiative. So the Blue Plan actually had more than 100 contributors. So not just academics, but lawyers, NGOs, stakeholders. So it was very representative. And as to your question about whether we have marine spaces or marine life, we are an island. I think a lot of people forget that, but we are an island. And we're surrounded by sea, and we are part of one of the best biodiversity hotspots in the world. We are just at the edge of the Coral Triangle. Our marine biodiversity is amazing. We hear sometimes stories about dolphins being sighted, turtles being sighted. People often tend to see the big things. Dugongs are not sighted so easily, but we see the feeding trails. There are feeding trails along our seagrass meadows. We also have a phenomenal biodiversity. We have hundreds of species of mollusks, for example, bivalves, marine snails, over 500 species of marine fishes, crustaceans, algae, sea grasses. Despite a lot of the development that is taking place, our marine spaces continue to host a very diverse marine biodiversity.
Maybe you can tell us what were some of the key recommendations that were put forth.
We had actually sent questionnaires to all the contributors, and from those responses, we could actually group them into these 6 main ideas, right? Collectively, the recommendations were to establish a formalized management system for our environment. So basically, before the marine environments are being urbanized or developed, we go through very specific, transparent processes to ensure that those developments are sustainable, for example. We also requested for sustained funds for research, long-term monitoring programs. Snapshots and data points are important, but they only make sense when you put them in the context of long-term lens, right? Another important recommendation was to protect some of the remaining natural marine habitats. Recommended some areas for conservation priority, like Pulau Semakau, Pulau Biola, Pulau Satumu. We also included a recommendation to include topics on natural environment to school syllabus and promote science communication. So there was an education element to the recommendation.
With regards to all the work that you and other marine researchers are doing, how do you think everyday individuals or even businesses like startups or social enterprises can contribute or work together with researchers to help protect our marine spaces?
Okay, I'm really glad that you're asking this question, Pariza, because I think when we build relationships, the future is bright, and what we can achieve together is limitless. I really do think so. I think sometimes when we work, within our own disciplines, we tend to think in silos, and sometimes it is important for us to have conversations with people not from the same field, because then we can understand a bit better maybe what can be achieved with all the different expertise, right? The Blue Plan is actually a good starting point. At the end of the document, there is a list of authors and contributors. If they are not able to find them and their contact address, they are welcome to contact me. My email address is jaafarz@nus.edu.sg. Anyone can write to me, and I'll be happy to help link you to the people who you are interested to link to. We always are in need of research funding, so manpower is important. We are always in need of volunteers to help us with various enterprises, right? There are citizen science programs. Like I said, opportunities are endless, so start making the connections.
Thank you so much for joining us. I really enjoyed having you here today. So that was Dr. Zeehan, and she hopes to help us better understand, manage, and conserve our coastal and marine ecosystems. So this has been the Ocean Purpose Project's Opportunity webinar series.